And welcome back to Subculture After Dark. Well, we've got something very, very special on our show. I should say a very, very special guest actually on our show. Obliviscaris have got their brand new album coming out on the 24th of March, and we thought today, what better way than to find out a little bit more about this album than to get Tim on the phone to talk all about it. Welcome to the program, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, mate, reading about this album before I even listened to it, this album sounded like it was a marathon for you guys to put together, with band members getting trapped overseas during the pandemic and everything. Tell us a little bit about the process that went into making this album.
Sometimes I don't even know where to start with answering that question. I mean, I'll give you the short version to start off with, which is, we came home in 2019 to write the new record, and we had studio time booked for March, April 2020. And that's when we were going to record the album. And we had done drums. We'd done drums in the US. Dan was just literally flying back. He was on the plane back to Australia when they announced they were closing the borders. So he got back in. But Tino, our bassist who lives in Italy, and Benji, our lead guitarist who lives in France, and our producer, Mark Lewis, who was in the US, none of them managed to get here. And then, of course, the borders stayed closed for a couple of years. And so that was that. So instead of everybody being together in one place recording the album in March, April 2020, it ended up taking us almost 2.5 years, and we recorded the album in 9 different recording studios in 5 different countries. So it was definitely a very, very trying and difficult process, and we definitely thought that we worried at times that maybe it might never get done, but we did it, and it's here, and we love it, and we're super proud of it. So it's exciting that it's finally coming out.
Yeah, that sounds like you put a big jigsaw puzzle together with all the parts coming in from around the world. Did that make the process more difficult, or in a way did that give you a little bit more creativity?
I mean, it definitely made it more difficult. The way that it worked was because of Mark Lewis. So Mark Lewis, he mixed and mastered our previous album, Earn, but for this one, we had organized to have him produce and record the album as well. Now, we weren't able to get him to record everything, although he did record the drums. But having him on board as a producer, even remotely, what it meant was that the guys are, recording guitar tracks, and we're sending them to him, using the wonders of technology to check over. He's sending feedback. We had him reamp the guitars over in the US. We had Martino recording bass at a recording studio in Italy, and literally he's there in the studio with Italy, quickly sending a draft of the bass tone to Mark Lewis live, who's then giving thumbs up or asking for adjustments, and then they get that settled, and then Tino then goes ahead and records the rest of the day, with the Italian recording engineer. So basically the ability to have somebody coordinating and checking all of the different elements when you've got all these different studios, all these different countries with a lot of different engineers, it was the key, So even for my vocals, I went to a studio here in Melbourne, Australia, tried out about 5 different microphones, we recorded the same different line, and we sent it to Mark Lewis. Hey, which one do you want to use? Which one do you think is going to fit with the choices we've made with the rest of the record? So having that one person that was involved, it is why the album sounds different with the production, and we really think that it's by far the best production, the best mix of our music that we've had on a record, and that's because it's the first time we've had the same person from start to finish that's been involved. So even with all the studios, all that time, quarter-year period, all that sort of stuff, it was really being able to have that connection with us and Mark Lewis, bring that all together that made it work.
I also understand that you had the opportunity to revisit some tracks. For example, Charles's violin solo on Gruel got revisited again in 2021, I understand. Was that a good thing? Did you see that as a good opportunity to go back and reimagine some songs or to fix up some things that you weren't happy with?
Yeah, it was an unusual experience because we haven't had a chance to do that since the first album. You know, the first album, Portal of Eye, it was a collection of, it was like a best of the early years of the band. You know, and the band had been together for 9 years at that time when it came out. I mean, when we started recording that album, I guess it had been 6 years, so it was kind of a long period of time that we were revising those songs. Whereas for Citadel Urn, you know, we wrote the record and then we recorded it, you know, pretty much straight away as soon as we were happy. For this one, you know, we had finished the drums, guitars, and bass when the pandemic hit. And, you know, I would say maybe I was like 70, 80% done with my vocals and violins. You know, I was due to record like the following month in April when the album got shut down. So with the example of Graal, what happened with that one, that was a song that was kind of last on my list of, I tried some parts, I wasn't quite happy, and I hadn't finished that when the pandemic hit. And so I had a bunch of demo ideas, but nothing that I had, you know, settled on, and it kind of got just put off to the side because the pandemic hit, and then there was other things that were more important for a while than finishing the record. So the unusual thing was that then finally, in between lockdowns, when I was planning to record my violin parts in April 2021, got to early 2021, and I'm going back to this song that, you know, the rest of the song was written like 9-12 months earlier, and I literally had not looked at the violin parts probably for 9 months. And I came back to it at the beginning of 2021 with a fresh mindset. And so the violin parts at the end of that song were then different to what I had in mind a year earlier. And that was really exciting because when I came with those parts, it was a real kind of light bulb. Yes, you know, this is way better than what I had last year. This is finally something that feels like it is going to, you know, be worthwhile of that moment, you know, because like that riff, I was, you know, so excited about it. You know, that's like the penultimate moment on the song, the big epic finale, and it needed a great violin solo, and I wasn't happy with anything I'd done the year before. So that was, I guess, a little side benefit of that ability to kind of disappear, like forget about it for a while, come back fresh and reconnect and do something different, and it came out really well.
Was there any negatives at all at being able to come back to tracks like that? Because I spoke to a band a few weeks ago who actually had an entire album recorded. They got told by their label that to postpone it because of the pandemic. They went back and listened to it 12 months later, hated every song that they'd recorded, and then headed back into the studio and re-recorded every track. Was there any negatives like that for you guys?
I'm like laughing at that. So, yeah, I'm going to quickly comment on that story because when we're doing a record, right, the initial inspiration when you're writing, it's really important to feel inspired and excited by the songs. And so that's the writing point because everything's in your imagination. The demos, they don't sound amazing, you know, it's a pre-production, but in your imagination, it sounds great. But then when you start to record the album, when you start to mix, and especially obviously master, it's supposed to be the final product, you come to life. And the theme through that ending part is, of course, picking apart everything that can be fixable or improved, especially through the mix and with the recording. Is there anything that's not coming across in the song? Do we need to add anything or change anything or re-record anything? And the catch with that is you spend a lot of time focusing on what could be better or what you're not liking about it. And so hopefully for me, it's always hoping that when we get to the end of the mix and master process, that I can listen to the master and go, yes, I love this. This is great. I'm really excited again, and I'm really proud of the product. What I found with this, and it's the same with every record, so I just ignore these thoughts, is that when we finish the album, I listen to it a few days in a row just to make sure everything is done and that is the final master. And then you tick it off, and then I can't listen to it again because if I listen to it again, like a couple of weeks later, I'll start to listen like, oh, did we mix that bit right? Or maybe that bit's not any good. Or, oh, maybe we fucked up that part. It's really tricky because you start overthinking things. But for me, that happens on every record and I know it. So I just go, no, it's done. Nothing can be changed. And so, yeah, I kind of sympathize for that band because, they could change it, and so then it's hard. If you can change something artistically, it's hard to lock that down. I think for us, what was tricky was getting back in the headspace, and so I found it really difficult, especially like I was finishing some of my vocals in 2022, in the first half of 2022, for sections or in some of these, like the vocals for Equas, our first single. I mean, I wrote those parts the second half of 2019, and then it's like May, June 2022 that I finished the vocals for that song, 2 to 3/4 years later.
Yeah.
And I found it really hard, like in 2021, early 2022, I found it really hard to get back in that headspace, and I was listening initially when I re-recorded some of the parts. I'm like, this doesn't sound any good. Like, it was good technically, but it didn't have the vibe of the original demos.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while to get back in the headspace because the creative headspace, I normally dive so deeply into the song. And after not being there for a long time, you can't just turn up and sing the parts. Like, you have to really, really feel the emotion of the song, and at least that's what it is like for me. And so I found that difficult, and that took me quite a while because of that stop-start nature that we would, when it was a start, it was like, oh man, how do I get back in this headspace of this 17-minute song we're writing and make sure I understand everything and that everything is working properly. So that was really challenging. And then just generally, the whole period was, extremely challenging for us. And also, people had things going on in their personal lives that were really difficult. And the band stuff didn't even seem that important at times. So it was like trying to get your headspace into the band stuff that didn't seem that important compared to some of the other stuff happening in our lives.
Yep.
But still wanting to do justice to these songs that we believed in so much.
I know you were quoted very early on as well saying that you wanted to create the best and most complete album to date with this album. Talk us through that a little bit. What did you mean by a complete album, and do you feel that you achieved that with the finished product?
Yeah, I guess what I mean by a complete album is something that, start to finish, that it flows and it makes sense creatively, that the songs are great, and that the production brings out the best in the songwriting, and the performances as well, bring out the best in the songwriting. So it's the combination of all that, because, an album it's the songwriting, it's the performances and the recording and the mixing, it's all of that put together, and you can have great songs, but if the performances aren't good enough or the mixing is not good enough, then people might not understand and they might not connect with the song. And there's plenty of stuff out there like that, where someone's written a really cool song, especially you hear that with local artists who maybe they don't have the money yet to get a great mixing engineer, or maybe on their early albums, and so it's always just searching for that, because our music is quite complicated to write, to perform, but to mix as well, and it was trying to get all of that together. And I think because we were able to get Mark Lewis involved in all those ways I spoke about earlier, I do think we achieved the most complete album, in those regards. And for us, basically everyone in the band, it's their new favorite album, and we're so excited to play a lot of these songs live and just kind of share it with everyone. And the feedback so far has been incredible, which is really exciting as well.
So how do you feel now that the album is about to come out? And I know you guys are heading out touring a lot for the second half of this year. How do you feel about being able to get back out onto the road and play these tracks live?
It's exciting. I mean, The last show we played was we did a European festival tour in June 2019, and we haven't done any shows since then. I haven't actually seen Martino and Benji since that tour in person. You know, we have band meetings like, you know, most weeks on Zoom, and so we see each other, we talk a lot, but I haven't actually been in the same room with, you know, two of my own band members for almost 4 years. That's kind of crazy. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, May 1, we arrive in Helsinki a few days early before our European tour to have a few days rehearsal ahead of that one. And then we're doing US, Canada late in the year as well. And we're going to be announcing pretty soon our Australian tour as well. We already have venues booked. We're just kind of tying things up. So, you know, for all our Australian fans, you know, stay tuned for that, because that is happening second half of this year. So we're really excited for that as well. And it'll just be great to connect with the guys in my own band in that way, to share that, but also with the audience, because to be honest, like, the most fun part about being in this band is playing live, playing these songs live. And these songs have had a really long period where we've been really excited about them, but no one has heard them. And so it'll be great to finally have the chance for everyone to hear it from March 24 when the album comes out, and then to come see them live, as well as, you know, some of the tracks from our other records as well on this upcoming world tour.
Awesome. Well, Tim, we're going to play Gruel in a minute on the show. What would you like to say to everybody out there, not only before they listen to this amazing track, but before they go out and grab Exul on the 24th of March as well?
I mean, we're just really grateful that people are supporting us in such strong ways and haven't forgotten about us. You know, I mean, it's been 5.5 years since our last record. We were a bit, you know, the discussion did come up within the band of like, oh man, I hope we don't take too long and people forget about us or something like that. And so to put out the new songs and see that the response has actually been, you know, far bigger than anything we've done before, is really exciting. And so just, you know, very grateful to anyone who has supported us in any way, whether it's buying a record or merch or supporting us on our Patreon or coming to a show, because, you know, it's only through that bands are able to make stuff happen and to continue to do what they do. So just really grateful for everyone that support us. And for those that are new to us, you know, it's definitely a journey, the new record, and so I'm just excited for people to give it a chance and see what they think. And yeah, just a really exciting year ahead. So yeah, and thanks very much for your time as well.